Bonding dentists together is what we love to do at Dentist Job Connect. My name is Paul Dr. Nacho Goodman, the founder of Dental Nachos and Dentist Job Connect. And if you are looking for an amazing associate dentist or an awesome associate job, text hire to 215-798-9897 to us at dentistjobconnect.com. I'm a multiple practice owner myself, and I'm proud to say I used my own invention, Dentist Job Connect, to recently hire an associate dentist who did my own filling this week. I'm willing to violate HIPAA. I'll talk about that with my guest here in a minute on my own mouth, but she just did a filling on me. And now I am here with the amazing Dr. Steve Dove, someone who I admire. We're going to talk about his practice, his dentisting life. Steve, thanks for being on with us here today. Just to kind of orient our audience to you, just give us a little snapshot, a summary of your life in dentisting.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. I'm honored to be able to do so. I'm a 2012 grad, and over that time, I went through multiple associateships. I would say at least three of them before I landed a practice. That was failing, if I'm honest. And we grew that, and we've done one, two, three startups, mergers. We've done acquisitions, and so currently sitting at in total four practices. And it's been wonderful. It's been a wonderful, wonderful experience that I've had growing from what I thought was going to be a absolutely failing, and I was going to be able to like completely bomb the whole thing. And maybe I can share that story with you guys
Sure.
here in a bit because it's been a wonderful experience. But yeah, 2012 grad, and my wife is also a dentist. So we've gone along this journey together.
Hey, so I know you've seen my stuff, so you know I wanted to play professional basketball. So I bring this basketball to remind me of my failed dreams. But you have your wife on your team, which I think is awesome. Before we dive into this, I always like to ask interesting questions, or at least I think they're interesting. When you went from one to two practices, what was like the biggest stress, challenge? Someone's just sitting there thinking, I own one practice. I want to be like Steve. One day I might want to be like Jason Tenori doing push-ups on a volcano, owning eight practices. There's always someone bigger or more, which is great, can be inspiring. But when you went from one to two, what were some of your like either challenges or aha moments that you would tell this audience about?
Ours is unique because when we went from one to two, I was in the one and my wife was in the startup, which was number two.
Gotcha.
Okay. So we have a switch there, but there's still responsibilities over there. And I didn't realize whenever you're working with a specific team, so say your team and you feel like you are just the best dentist ever, you can come in there, you can crank. It's like a basketball team. You may be an amazing player, but if the rest of your team isn't appropriately trained, you can't get all the shots over here. Like
Yeah.
you can't score as much. And honestly, by the numbers, you're not as good. And that's what happens with startups. So you take your amazing team that you have here, but there's a whole new team, right, that's over here on your second location, and they don't know all the stuff that you've already trained for team one. They don't have any of that. You're working from nothing. These are brand new baby basketball players that don't know how to
Yeah.
dribble yet, right? And so when you take that analogy and then you put, even if it's you, even if you're the amazing one, you put it over here, it's not the same. There are tons more fumbles, there are tons more missed shots, there are tons, and you think that it's just going to be just like the old one, and it's not. And having some really solid systems that you can transfer from one office to the other office is really, really important, particularly written systems, so they're easy to be able to find.
I love that take home point. Everyone needs these written systems. I think Mark Costas talks about his alien abduction manual, which I think is so important, right? In a poignant story for me, one of the most important people in my life, my amazing office manager, but more than my office manager, my friend, someone I trusted, had a brain aneurysm in 2018, and she survived and she recovered and she's amazing. But for 6 full months, dealing with the emotional devastation was one thing, but then the I was looking through her phone at Gmail stuff, being like, which vendor was this? And it showed me how important it is to create these systems because you may need to use them for fun or for, it's a PG show or for effed up things that happen in your
Yeah.
dental career. So I think that point is so great. Now, you're out there with us at Dentist Job Connect looking for a dentist to join your team. So
Yeah.
just tell us about what you're looking for in this dentist and why you're looking for this dentist. It's your opportunity to bring to life this position.
Absolutely. So I'll speak to the dentist themselves. And I want to be able to put myself in their shoes. And like, hey, if I was looking for a job somewhere, I would want good communication. I'd want a large patient inflow, so a large amount of patients to be able to see. And I want the ability to be able to grow, right? I wouldn't want to be able to remain stagnant over here. and I would want to be able to provide for my family. And that is certainly something that we have at our offices. So we've got four offices, which also gives multiple doctors and multiple different opinions. So they won't work alone. There'll be other doctors
Yeah.
associated with that office, which is really, really helpful. I think it's part of the reason you, Paul, chose to be able to do what you do, to be able to share so people didn't feel alone.
Yep,
And it's
totally.
helpful in group practices to be able to have that. So we got group practice, and not only do we have group practice, we have groups of group practices, right? And so that you put them all together, and we have all staff team meetings so they get to bounce ideas of other people in a safe environment. And so that's really important to us and something that would really be good for the person who comes on board. Now, for me, what I'm looking to do is I gain my greatest joy from growing others. Like just straight up, I love hosting team meetings. I love watching people grow. I love watching people get better. In fact, I would rather be called coach than dentist, or
Yeah.
boss, right? Like that is the way that I gain my greatest joy, and I want to be able to continue to be able to do that. But I can't do that if I'm at the chair 5 days a week. And I'm only there currently because we had an awesome doctor who moved too far away. For his family, and I'm in there working currently his patients. And so I'm the interim, and I'm just looking for somebody to be able to jump in.
I like that. You're the interim dentist.
I am the interim. I like,
Yeah.
yeah.
But you're
So
also, here's the thing I think I love talking to you. It's funny, and we since we also love sports. Whenever there's an interim coach, right, for sports, for whatever happens, someone gets fired or leaves, there's probably that interim coach wants to stay and be the head coach, but you want to relinquish your interim title as soon as possible, pretty much. You
that's
do
exactly
not
right.
want to go back to being the head dentist there, right? You're the interim dentist who happens to be the owner. And it's, I think what you've shared, I want to, there's so many things to talk about, but like, just talk to us for a minute. Now let's go off of your job. You're a DSI coach. That's why I wore this biceps and EBITDA shirt for you guys. Dental Success Institute. I'm a member. I love everything about it. I think it has like a gym culture where everybody is applauding each other, whether you can bench press 100 pounds or 500 pounds. It's magical. Huge fan of everything they do. DSN's a great sponsor. But just maybe just talk for a minute. We'll go off of your job for a minute. Like, you have to be the interim dentist and be willing to be the interim dentist as you're growing. And do you find that with some of your coaching clients have to do that? They say, hey, guess what, Steve? I'm down to 2 days a week. And then through 2 months go by and say, Steve, I'm back to 4 days a week. Just talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that as an owner, there's a responsibility that we have to be able to take care of anything that gets dropped, right? And so this is one of those that it's a really important spot for me to be able to hop back in. And don't get me wrong, I love seeing patients. I love to be able to take care of them. I enjoy being able to do dentistry, whether that be, implants or ortho or root canals. Like I enjoy being able to do that, but I don't think that that's the best place
Yeah,
for the organization for me to be in, right? And so sometimes we have to make those calls, even if they're things that we enjoy or good at, to be able to allow somebody else to be able to grow into that spot. And I'm hoping that we find the right person. And the number one characteristic for me is actually their ability to be able to ask questions.
I love
And that
that.
seems strange, but like it's a teachability. The best people and associate or otherwise, are the people who ask questions whenever we're going through something because it means they're engaged. It means they're
Yeah.
willing to learn. It means they're willing to change. And that is the number one characteristic that I'm looking for because I can teach clinical skills. I just want somebody who has a hunger, right, and wants to be able to grow. And that's what we're looking for in the associate to be able to come on board.
Yeah. I love what you shared, and to kind of reinforce it as someone who, has dental practices and also these made up companies from my head after appetizers, you know, I'd rather have any team member ask me too many questions than too few questions because you can always pause. And I have been an associate, and I understand it because associates, we're not trained to be vulnerable as dentists. So you actually feel foolish sometimes asking questions as an associate dentist. And I'd say to my associates, hey, I'd rather you check with me, especially when we're trying to align on all the things we do. And what's interesting, I think what most people don't realize is these often aren't, did I reduce enough for a crown prep, right? These often aren't, is this contact okay? These often are, Mrs. Smith wants to go again without doing this crown, but half the tooth is missing. Do we hold her accountable or do we say we'll see it in 6 months? These are sometimes the questions because I want to have my associates back. And I'm like, listen, You tell Mrs. Smith, but don't push her today. I know her. I've pushed her before and I've been growled at by her. And those are the things I think are so key. Now, what I want to do in this portion, and we're still is like, sometimes my team will take out just this. We're going to do a fun speed round with Dr. Steve Dove, DSI coach, amazing guy, multi practice owner, looking for an associate dentist, looking for someone to join his team. So these are just like fun, fast questions. Where are you located, Steve?
Springfield, Missouri.
Springfield, Missouri. And the reason why you're looking for an associate, and I love that you referenced my car boat analogy before, kind of give us a few sentences of why you're looking for this associate dentist.
Yeah. So I'm looking to be able to continue to, well, I want to be able to give in order for someone to be able to grow. And I firmly believe that our offices have something that other offices may not. And that's the ability to be able to see a lot of patients because you'd be taking over a full doctor schedule. In addition to the fact that you get to walk into an environment of a really well trained team. Springfield, Missouri is a great place to be able to be. In fact, my wife and I chose it on purpose. We don't have any family here. We actually chose this location because we wanted a big city with a small town feel. And if there's an associate out there that's looking for that, Springfield, Missouri is a wonderful place to be able to be.
Love the way you described that there. Now, how will your associate be compensated? I think sometimes too often dentists make compensation confusing, vague, ambiguous. So it doesn't have to be detailed. But if I was going to come work for you and I could say, hey, Steve, I got to convince my wife we're going to move to Springfield. We'll play pickup basketball on the weekends, but just tell me kind of a compensation range I should expect. What would you tell me?
Absolutely. I There would be no reason why they wouldn't be able to make between 200 and $350,000 coming in. It's gonna be a little bit based upon how much they're comfortable to be able to produce. But I also think that if they came in and they weren't, we'd be able to get them there, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
time frame. And so my goal is to be able to condense time. If you start here and you know as a associate dentist, hey, like if I'm coming in over here and I'm not a very high producer, well, guess what? We can get you there and we can get you that upper range even more with the use of additional surgeries. So implants over here or ortho or root canals and all that training is available to be able to get up range. It's just how fast to be able to get
Yeah.
there, right? So we will be on the upper range. It's just how long it's going to take to get the training to be able to be there. But I don't think you'd be able to train any faster than being in this particular clinic.
And I'm just kind of reiterating, you're replacing you in the dentistry that you're doing, and that's why it is a car, not a boat. There's good reasons for boat positions, no problem by boat, but when you need a car, you need someone to replace it. I tell the audience and associates, replacing dentistry that's already being done is just one of the best scenarios to be in. Now, what procedures would you like them to know how to do? I know there might be opportunities to learn more, implants, root canals, cosmetic dentistry, but if someone's listening to saying, hey, what procedures when I go down there are they going to expect me to do? What would you tell the audience?
Mm. I would expect them to be able to do bread and butter dentistry,
Yeah.
right? And I use the word expectation loosely because my goal, as long as they are trainable, we can get them where they want to be able to be, right? But hopping in, obviously you're replacing a doctor's schedule. It would be bread and butter dentistry that's available. So fillings over here, some simple extractions if they wanted to would be on there. Some crowns for sure. In fact, a lot of crowns would be on there. And so those are some of the procedures that I would expect them to be able to do. I'd also expect them to be able to work well with team members, right? And that may not necessarily be a procedure, but hey, we're nice people. We want to work with nice people, right? And we want to be able to continue that excellent culture that we have within the office.
I love that. I might frame it as fundamental skills, right? Fundamental skills. They don't have to go right out to half court and hit a Steph Curry 3-point shot. And I also would like to share, Steve, and maybe you've heard this joke before. I would like dentistry to stop calling it bread and butter dentistry because when was the last time you went home to your dinner table and there was a giant loaf of bread and butter on the table? Oh, never, right? Or you only have bread and butter when you're at a wedding and it's your treat day. So I want to reframe it as kale and quinoa dentistry, right? Because bread and butter, we've used this for years from the 50s. I think we've established that we do not put giant loaves of bread on the table anymore. So I'm going to call it fundamental skills in kale and quinoa. Then you've
Let's
said
do
this
it.
before, but I say dentists are people too. Not everyone thinks we're people, right? You know, why don't they think we're people? Because they walk in and they say, I just want to let you know I hate the dentist. And I want to say, I just want to let you know you could have kept that in your head, right? Not one person asked you to be mean. But let's just say the day's over, it's on the weekends, and you were treatment planning just some fun things to do. What would you tell some of these people are fun things to do?
Okay, this is specific to our area. Well, Springfield, Missouri is actually home of the original Bass Pro. So Bass Pro, Johnny Morris, Springfield, Missouri is the headquarters. So, and there's a reason for that is because there are a lot of outdoor activities, hunting, fishing, camping, and the amount of money that specifically Johnny Morris has put into this area is astounding. The and visiting any one of his multiple locations throughout the area. Um, I've had dentists in parts of mastermind groups with me who flew out and they spend a weekend over here. And they said, I had no idea Missouri was this beautiful and this amazing. It had this much stuff. Like it's like the hidden gem of the Midwest. And it really is. We're in the Ozarks and it's a beautiful area with four seasons. And like I said, I picked it on purpose, right?
Awesome.
It's so good, and there are so many things to be able to do in Springfield, Missouri, that anyone who came over here, there would be an abundance. Now, there are things it doesn't have, right? So if I compare this to a major metropolitan area over here, there's no giant sports team, right? So we've got sports teams over here, but they're gonna be minor leagues. You can still go to a what we call the Springfield Cardinals. So the Cardinals are obviously in St. Louis, but if you want baseball over here, we've got the Springfield Cardinals, and they'd be the minor league for the St. Louis team. So like,
Who's your favorite pro team?
who's my favorite pro team?
Yeah.
Like of any pro
Any
team, I can pick
sport.
any
Yeah.
sport. I love the Royals.
Royals,
So yeah, I went to school in Kansas City, and I really I love the Royals. So that'd be my favorite pro team.
Kansas City. And did you watch the Super Bowl this year?
Absolutely.
Yes. Did you realize at one point it was 34 to nothing? The Eagles were beating the Kansas City Chiefs, and they had to put their backups in the game. So I just want to remind all Chiefs fans like you, even though you got two Super Bowls, us from Philadelphia, I hope we get a rematch next year because that was the most joy Philadelphia's had in a long time.
Yeah, I gotta say, watching that game and my heart, it was humbling. It was humbling
Humble.
for
I
sure.
like that. You got to be humbled sometimes. I
Yeah,
like that. Well, I want to
exactly.
stay around for a minute, but I want to just wrap up here with Steve is amazing. Text Springfield to 215-798-9897 to apply to this position. I want to share people like Steve are so generous with their knowledge as coaches. Text and meet him anyway. You can learn something about dentistry. You can learn something about your career. It's great to reach out and connect with people, find out more. Thanks for sharing all about this with us, Steve. I want you to stick around for a minute because what I wanted to ask you as a bonus segment was you mentioned you bought a failing practice. And most people are told, and I tell most people, don't buy a failing practice, right? Buy a practice that brings in $1 million and the dentist makes $300,000 a year because these fixer uppers are tough. But you bought a fixer upper, and I would love to hear more about this story.
Oh, let's go. Okay, so here's the long story. I'm an associate and I'm looking for practices. So I'm looking at multiple different ones all throughout the city over here, like where can I be able to go? And the owner dentist that I'm currently working for as associate finds out. And it does not go well. This is not a fun conversation. It's probably, if I'm honest, the worst I feel like I've ever been treated in my life. Like in that moment, I'm like, okay, well, I don't have a lot of options. My wife is also a dentist and I can't move.
Yeah.
And so what do I do? Well, one of the offices that I honestly wasn't planning on buying, but was available, I was like, well, I guess I have to buy this one, right?
Yeah.
So that I have a job to be able to go to be able to stay in the area. So I do. And it was producing maybe somewhere between 250 and $300,000 a year.
And just for
So
people who know this, because in case the dental students watching, this is a less like a third of what a medium-sized practice is producing. Most practices you're looking to acquire, I tell people you're looking between 800 and 1.2 million, right? So just to set the context, this is like a third or sometimes a quarter of these practices, but you keep going.
yes, exactly. And so, realizing this, and the reason I made this decision was I looked at the numbers and I looked at the notes and I thought, if I bomb this, I can become an associate again and I can pay off the note, right? Like I'm gonna be
Yeah.
responsible. Like this is part of I'm like, okay, like if this goes terribly. And so I hop in there and I realize that I'm not making enough money. And so I'm not getting paid. And so my wife has to be able to, through her job, support our family for
Yeah.
at least the first 6 months, right? So like if I didn't have her, I wouldn't have made it.
Yeah.
And I'm incredibly grateful for her doing that. And she worked two jobs to be able to make sure that happened while I was in this practice. During the first 2 weeks that I'm there, one of the front desk girls quits. She
Jeez.
then tells me, "Oh, by the way, the old doctor had me take home a flash drive that included all the patient data. So basically, a backup of the system. And by the way, my car got broken into and I lost it."
Jeez.
So yeah, and so what happens over here, at least with like HIPAA law, if this happens and you have enough people, you have to contact the news agency, right, to be able to tell them that you have lost all this data. So out of no fault of my own, I didn't know this was happening. I didn't know
Yeah.
this was a thing, and I have to now call like the local, what we call like KY3 or a news station,
Oh,
and
wow.
tell them that I've lost all this data. And I'm freaking out, almost like
Yeah.
breaking out in hives. I'm like, I spent all this money and now it's just going to go because somebody did something that I was completely out
Yeah.
of like the loop and happening. Luckily for me, called in my attorney. He came in, looked at it, and the drive was thankfully encrypted, and so I was safe,
Oh,
right?
good.
So nobody's getting
Yeah.
it. I was okay, but it was still a massive freak out
Yeah.
moment, and that was a real realization for me for what it's like to be able to be a practice owner and the level of risk that's potentially there. Yeah, go for it.
Keep going here. I want to just interject that we had not exactly the same situation. We had a ransomware attack, and it was one of the worst 3 days of my life outside of personal problems, and
Hmm.
everything went fine, right? There was nobody like what they make you feel when this happens is like something out of a movie, and you feel like you're going to go to HIPAA jail, right? Like or dead.
That's
There was
exactly right.
debtor's prison. I feel like I'm
Yes,
going to go to HIPAA prison, right? So
that's exactly right.
your story brought up emotions in me that as you were sharing that, but keep going.
Well, absolutely. And I don't wish that on anybody,
Yeah.
ever. It's absolutely awful. But anyway, so 6 months, I don't get paid a dollar, like not $1. Every dollar comes in, goes back into the business. And I realize I'm going to have to find a different way. And so I look up ways to be able to treatment plan better. I look up ways to be able to train my team members. I get different team members in there that are able to be able to do it. I drop some insurances over here, and all of a sudden the production starts doubling and just gets better and better and better and better and better to where like 2 years in, we're doing so well, we're like, hey, we could do a startup, right? And so we do a startup with my wife at the same time, and we grow that one. And then we find another location, and we merge two of them, and then we start a startup for a pediatric office, and then we do another startup for a pediatric office, and it just continued to be able to grow. But we had to go through the pain at the beginning to learn the things that we didn't know in order to be able to grow from there, if that makes any sense. And I'm
Yeah.
hoping, as my good friend Alistair McDonald says, is to be able to condense time. And for those
Yeah.
people who I don't want people to have to go through what I went through during that time. And I would much rather tell them how to be able to do it and what pitfalls to be able to avoid in order for them to do that. And I'm hoping to be able to give those skill sets to an associate and the associate we currently have too while they're on board so that they can grow without going through that pain.
I love that mission and message because it's like it was smart people learn from their own mistakes, wise people learn from mistakes of others. Alistair is wise. As we wrap up in a couple minutes, but I just want to ask, just in case no one has ever heard of it before, what's the DSI and what does being a coach mean? Like, just tell us a little bit about your DSI world.
Absolutely. So my wife and I are both coaches. DSI is amazing, Dental Success Institute, hosted by Mark Costas, and he's been a near and dear friend. We've been coaching for 4 or 5 years. We've been a part of DSI since 2017, and so being a coach means that I meet certain requirements, both my wife and I, including overhead, leadership score, and our personal well-being.
Yeah.
And they vote, so that all the coaches will vote and say, hey, we're going to accept this particular coach or this particular individual in. So you get accepted from the group. And when you get accepted from the group, you join an elite group of maybe 10 to 12, I think,
Yeah.
currently that are there. And we get the opportunity to share our knowledge with other people. So they call up. So I take calls every single week, and they'll call and they'll ask questions, right? And we'll be able to, based upon the things we've done well and the things we haven't done well,
Yeah.
we can guide these practices into being able to find the solutions that they need. And sometimes the solutions that they need surprise me.
Right.
Recently, I went through and I had general ledger. So I had never, I mean, I do my own stuff, but I would read through a general ledger of one of the other doctors to be able to point out all the areas that he was spending way too much money on. And it wasn't something that I started the call with, but he's like, "Hey, I don't know. The numbers aren't working. How do I do this?" And me going through line item by line item with him on the call of, "Hey, guess what? You don't need to be able to pay for that Adobe subscription that you don't use that costs you 100
Yeah.
bucks a month for the past 5 years." And you start tacking those up enough, and there was probably 40 grand a year
Yeah.
that you're just paying extra stuff for that wasn't necessary. And so those are the kind of moments where I'm like, man, that was really amazing. And I get to be able to do my favorite thing, which is to be able to grow other people.
I love that. I mean, you guys are a gift to what they do. People should look into coaching at some level, but it holds you accountable. It allows you, people have your back. You know what? I imagine many people who are thinking, oh, I got to get into coaching because of these problems, find out those aren't the real problems that they really have to talk about. And some of it has to do with things that dental school never even touched on, from team management. I mean, I'm actually very proud of the story. I don't know if you were at the last event. I told it in a short time frame. I'll protect their DSI HIPAA. They had an associate dentist producing $100,000 a month. Great clinical fit, right? Um, Communication ability with patients, amazing. Okay. So I talk about three C's: clinical fit, communication ability, culture fit. There was just one problem, small one, making the rest of the team cry all the time, right? So we had the hot seat in this. They said, should we fire? I said, let me talk to her. And I talked with this associate, like a Nacho Mary Poppins, or if you watched Billions, like a Wendy Rhodes. And I said, like, oh, do you see how, like, some people might think that you're coming off a little strong? Only 20 minutes. And it was magical. And she's still there, right? They didn't give up on her. And I
Yep.
think of that as a win, because there's so many things that you have to do as owners that you just can't do yourself. And also, it's so important to have other voices talk to your team that are not in the game with you, because it's like I say, like, if I ask my kids to eat their vegetables, they do not want to, but if my sister comes by as their aunt and asks them nicely, she will. And people need aunts like that in life. So you guys are do amazing things with this. But I'm proud. If you need associate help, I'm on call for that. you
Yeah,
know
thank you so
I,
much.
yeah, because you can't just discard someone,
Mm-mm.
because in any position, I mean, Jason Noyes he says, have I trained him enough? Right? Have I trained them enough? Have I done the best possible job training them? And are there any other seats in my organization that they could fill outside of that one? So thank you for
Yeah.
doing the work of the Lord with all of that, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to be able to piggyback off that, Paul, you're right. Our job is to be able to make sure that we as leaders take the responsibility first. Hey, what
Yeah.
could I have done differently in the situation? And what haven't I done? Maybe that's communication. Maybe it's communicating with them like, hey, you really need to not be making people cry all the time, right?
Yeah.
Or calling in help, right? Has that
Right.
conversation happened? Or is there another position within the organization that may be best suited to that person's skills,
Right.
right? Versus where they are. Way before letting somebody go. In fact, that should be the last step that you go through in those situations.
And I'll kind of finish up with this concept. I have two dental practices still, and I
Mhm.
have two companies I thought up in my head. And these two companies I thought up in my head, the financial risk is like 100 times greater than dentistry, right? I never laid awake at night thinking, no way can I pay payroll at my dental office, right? I might have had difficulty or move my around, but operationally, dentistry is like 100 times harder than this other stuff. The
For sure.
operational complexity of dentistry is so complex, and owners should realize that. From the
Mhm.
Adobe subscriptions to the team refereeing to having to have 47 different insurances, from HIPAA to reviews. So dentists should remember that, because unless you're a practice owner doing it, you just think, oh, I guess this is how it's supposed to be, and it's supposed to be complex. But get help from people like you. Well, Steve, you're an awesome guy. Thanks for doing this. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Really appreciate you sharing with us today.
Thanks so much, Paul.